Howdy, folks. Radical Russ, your red state refugee here, and I got to talk about how wonderful it is that the walls are starting to close in on Donald Trump. We've gotten the latest sentences for seditious conspiracy in the January 6th insurrection. I just thought I'd catalog them all here. We've got Kelly Meggs, head of the Oath Keepers, one of the leaders of the Oath Keepers. He got 12 years. Oddly ironic, that name, Oath Keepers. It's a group of former military and police who all think they're upholding their oath to protect the Constitution by trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power that's listed in the Constitution. Okay, I don't know how the logic works, but guess you got 12 years in a cell to figure that out. Zachary Rell from the Proud Boys, he got 15 years. Joseph Biggs from the Proud Boys got 17 years. Ethan Nordine from the Proud Boys got 18 years. And really great to see these sentences. I lived in Portland, Oregon for 15 years, and on numerous occasions, these Proud Boys would show up into town to try to start fights with a Black Lives Matter march or an Antifa demonstration or something like that. Good to see these guys spending a lot of time behind bars. And then Enrico Terrio, the head of the Proud Boys, just was sentenced yesterday to 22 years. One afternoon of F around and 22 years of find out. Let's not forget Stuart Rhodes, head of the Oath Keepers, also got 18 years. And when it comes to these sentences for seditious conspiracy, it's very clear to me that these six gentlemen and others like them that are convicted for their actions on January 6th would be held to account under the 14th Amendment's Section 3. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is the part that was written after the Civil War to bar the Confederates from holding offices of power within our government. And it reads as such: no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, may remove such disability. Now, there's a whole lot to that, so let's break it down, shall we? This first part: no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, basically means you can't run for anything, from president all the way down to dog catcher, city council, county commissioner, nor can you be in the military, from private all the way up to 5-star general or the corresponding rank in any branch. Nor can you be in the judiciary in any way. Basically, you can't hold any position of trust within the United States at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level, at the local level. That's it. You are barred from any potential office. Who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, blah, 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 blah. All that is saying is, if you had previously taken an oath before, raised your right hand, swore that you'd uphold the Constitution, whether that was when you enlisted in the military, whether you became a judge, a mayor, a dog catcher, a president, whatever, if you've ever sworn that oath before, you cannot swear that oath again in any office. Shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. That just means if you've been part of an insurrection or rebellion against the United States and you took an oath of office, you can never take an oath of office again. Or given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. Aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States. Aid and comfort to those who were engaged in an insurrection. Keep that on the top of your mind for a second. We'll come back to it. But Congress shall remove such a disability with a 2/3 vote of either house. And so if Congress decided they wanted to allow Stuart Rhodes to run for dog catcher, if 2/3 of the House voted to say so and 2/3 of the Senate voted to say so, he could have his right back. And this actually happened after the Civil War. When we had the Civil War, we passed the 14th Amendment, Section 3. We kept the Confederates from being able to join any state or federal office. But then we passed the Amnesty Act. I think it was in 1872. And the Amnesty Act was passed by a two-thirds vote of both houses that granted a lot of like the low-level Confederates their rights to hold office back. So the question that's on everyone's mind right now is whether or not the 14th Amendment's Section 3 applies to Donald Trump for having fomented an insurrection against the United States. And you can tell someone's gotten Donald Trump's ear about this because he posted about it on his Truth social media account the other day, saying, quote, "Almost all legal scholars have voiced opinions that the 14th Amendment has no legal basis or standing relative to the upcoming 2024 presidential election." Well, first of all, that's a lie right out of the gate, because that is not what almost all legal scholars are saying. Lawrence Tribe, the progressive Harvard law professor, Michael Ludwig, the conservative judge, and two prominent conservatives from the Conservative Federalist Society, that same group that put together the judge list for Donald Trump to put justices on the bench to overturn Roe v. Wade. So you know they're no Joe Biden fans or raving liberals. Those conservative legal scholars are the ones that have brought this up in the first place. Trump goes on to say in his social media post, like election interference, it is just another trick being used by radical left communists, Marxists, and fascists to again steal an election. Again, the whole reason we're in this position is because Donald Trump could not accept the results of a free and fair election. This guy does more projecting than an IMAX theater. It's just ridiculous. But as far as whether or not the 14th Amendment, Section 3, applies to Donald Trump, let's take a look at the nonpartisan Congressional Research Service, which has taken a look at this question and come up with some of the following ideas about it. First of all, it points out that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does not expressly require a criminal conviction, and historically, one was not necessary. So some people are trying to argue that Donald Trump hasn't been convicted of anything. No court has said he has committed an insurrection, so you can't keep him off the ballot at this point. But as history has shown, that's not the way that this has worked. Lawrence Tribe and Michael Ludwig argued that this is self-executing, that it is just as obvious as the nose on your face, like the other self-executing provisions for the presidency. You got to be 35 years old. You got to be an American citizen who was born in this country and lived here for 14 years. There's no judge that has to say you're not 35. There's no judge that has to say that you weren't born in America. Those are facts that are true or false. They do not need to be adjudicated. They are obvious. Just as it is obvious that Donald Trump fomented an insurrection on January 6th. And this has actually been taken to court in one case. A New Mexico state court removed Otero County Commissioner Couy Griffin from office and prohibited from seeking office or any future office based on his participation in and preparation for the January 6th interruption of election certification. So we've already got one person who has been adjudicated according to this 14th Amendment claim. Now, where this gets difficult is because the Constitution doesn't expressly declare what is an insurrection or a rebellion. Now, when this was written back in the Civil War, it was pretty obvious. A civil war had happened. That was clearly an insurrection or a rebellion. However, other parts of the Constitution give authority to Congress to put down insurrections. And one of those things is the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act defines an insurrection as acts that oppose or obstruct the execution of the laws of the United States or impede the course of justice under those laws. And that was the stated intention of the whole Stop the Steal rally, to stop the peaceful transfer of power. And the insurrection that happened on January 6th was all about that, stopping the peaceful transfer of power. So it is clearly an insurrection, and clearly something that Donald Trump fomented. But let's say that he didn't directly foment the insurrection. Let's say that Donald Trump was just giving some political speeches about fighting and stealing elections, and we got to fight hard, and Mike Pence has to do the right thing. Let's just say that was all conjecture. It was all just mist and dust in the wind and had nothing to do with fomenting an insurrection. We come back here to the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that little part about giving aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Aid or comfort to insurrectionists. Now, we already looked at the sentences for seditious conspiracy that were handed down to members of the Oath Keepers and members of the Proud Boys. And I don't think anyone would disagree that those people who have been convicted of a seditious conspiracy to obstruct the lawful operations of the United States government would be barred under the 14th Amendment, Section 3. They are clearly insurrectionists. And who has been giving aid and comfort to them? One Donald John Trump. ABC News reports from June 23rd of 2023 that former President Trump spoke at a fundraiser on behalf of people charged in the January 6, 2021 attack at the U.S. Capitol. He said, quote, "I'm going to make a contribution," end quote, to this group, Patriot Freedom Project, that includes at least one actual defendant along with multiple family members of those charged in the attack. Donald Trump is giving aid and comfort through his social media posts and perhaps financially to those who committed a seditious conspiracy against the United States to thwart the lawful transfer of power to the lawfully elected president of the United States, Joe Biden, who won by over 7 million votes. And now some states are starting to take heed about this 14th Amendment, Section 3. In New Hampshire, a man by the name of Corky Messner, he was a former U.S. Senate candidate from New Hampshire, endorsed by Donald Trump. So again, not some flaming progressive liberal here, a Republican who is suing to keep Donald Trump off the ballot in New Hampshire because he violated the Constitution. In Arizona, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes has been thinking about this as a Democrat. However, the Arizona Supreme Court has barred him from doing what the Constitution demands of his office in keeping Donald Trump off the ballot. Fontes even responded that the ruling by the Arizona Supreme Court would mean that someone who was a 34-year-old born in Poland who's not a United States citizen could put his name on the ballot in Arizona, because the Arizona Supreme Court has declared that he, as the Secretary of State, can't keep anyone off the ballot. Congress has to do that. Ridiculous decision. In Michigan, we have Robert Davis, who's a very active citizen activist who is suing the Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, again, to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. And the Secretary of State there, Jocelyn Benson, has mentioned that she's been in contact with Secretaries of State in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and Maine, all discussing what they're going to do. And I'll tell you what, folks, all 50 Secretaries of State better be ready for these lawsuits no matter what they do. If they put Donald Trump on the ballot, someone's going to sue to say that he's disqualified under Amendment 14, Section 3. If you don't put him on the ballot, someone's going to sue to say that you're unlawfully keeping him off the ballot. So all 50 Secretaries of State better be ready for the lawsuits in this case. And for the people out there that are claiming election interference or this how somehow isn't fair, first of all, for the people who are claiming that it's not fair, that somehow your vote has been stolen, cry me a few more tears for the black voters in Georgia whose polling places are shut down, to the black voters in North Carolina who get racially gerrymandered out of their seats. We've seen so many Supreme Court decisions and other federal court decisions coming down recently to all those southern states that used to be covered under a section of the Voting Rights Act before Chief Justice Roberts decided racism didn't exist anymore. Anyway, so I don't really put much into these people that are claiming it's not fair and their votes are stolen when they don't seem to care too much about other people's votes getting stolen. But let's address that anyway. This idea of let the people decide. Don't take Donald Trump off the ballot. Put him on and let this come down to the people. We did that. We did that in 2020, and he didn't accept the results. We think we're going to make that mistake again? Put him on the ballot again so he can once again say it was stolen and once again foment some violence to try to stop it? No. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. You can't get fooled again. I think George Bush said something like that. And this other argument that, well, if we go and declare Trump was an insurrectionist, then the next election comes around, then the Republicans will just declare that Biden's an insurrectionist, and they'll declare that this is. Come on now. First of all, trying to decide what we're going to do on whether or not the GOP is going to act in bad faith in response, we'd never do anything. They're always going to do that regardless. So why not actually do it? If the shoe were on the other foot, if this were Barack Obama who had led an insurrection, do you think for a second they wouldn't be pulling Amendment 14, Section 3 out of their dusty old constitutions that they only have dog-eared on the Second Amendment? You damn right they would. It's about time Democrats actually use some political power to accomplish something good. And, I don't know, stand up for the Constitution. Why not? I'm telling you, folks, what's going to happen in this is as this gets closer and closer and the walls close in, Trump sees those sentences. He sees Enrico Tarrio getting 22 years. He sees Stuart Rhodes getting 18 years. If the lieutenants are getting a couple decades, what happens to the generals? That's what Donald Trump is thinking right now. He's looking at a very, very long time behind bars, and he ain't going to go there, folks. Donald Trump is going to flee. As soon as it becomes glaringly obvious he's got no way out, he is going to flee. He will either be in some place on the Black Sea set up for him by Vladimir Putin, some place in I don't know, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, somewhere that doesn't have an extradition treaty. I'm not really familiar with all of them because I have no need to be an internationally wanted criminal and flee for my life. But he will flee, and he will campaign in exile, and he will make life a living nightmare for the GOP because what choice do they have? Donald Trump has such a strong grip on at least 1/3 of the Republican Party that have joined his cult that they have to nominate him, or else he's going to run independently as a write-in candidate or independent somehow. He will run in exile, folks. He will be on a beach somewhere on the Black Sea, typing into Truth Social and making his little videos to campaign, and he'll generate enough enthusiasm amongst his rabid base to be able to split that GOP vote and bring us a second Biden-Harris term, and perhaps even be enough to bring in a bigger majority in the Senate and recapture the House. We could have a situation where Donald Trump has so poisoned the well. He has made his base distrust mail-in voting and early voting, so they'll lose those opportunities. And then with the down ballot effect of Donald Trump, if he's not on a ballot in some of these states, some of those people don't show up to vote and don't vote for the rest of the Republicans down the ballot. For the first time in a long time, I'm feeling really excited about the possibilities for a Democratic trifecta in 2024, thanks to Donald Trump and the 14th Amendment. I'm Radical Russ, and that's the rant.